Have you ever wondered, what will be your final thought before you die? Will it be peace, or will it be regret? Most people wait until it's too late. Too late to say sorry. Too late to love fully. Too late to live truthfully. But the Buddha didn't teach us to die in fear. He taught us to live so well that when death comes, we have nothing left to hold on to, and nothing left to regret. In the next 70 minutes, you're not just going to hear about death. You'll discover how to live, so that death becomes the softest goodbye, and your life, the clearest expression of meaning. This is not philosophy. It's the path, the Buddha's path, to a meaningful life, and a peaceful death. We begin with a truth most people spend their lives avoiding. The truth that one day, you and I will die. Not someday far away, but someday certain. The clock is always ticking. And yet, we go on as if we are immune to this truth. As if death is something that only happens to others. We plan for retirement, for vacations, for next year's goals, but not for the only thing we are guaranteed to face. And so, when death finally comes near, it often comes as a shock. Not just because life is ending, but because of what was never lived. The unspoken apologies, the suppressed dreams, the compassion never shown, the moments that were wasted in distraction, in anger, in clinging to things that never truly mattered. That is what regret feels like at the end, and it is a bitter kind of suffering. The Buddha understood this more than 2,000 years ago. He faced this question not with fear but with clarity. What kind of life ensures that when our final breath comes, we won't meet it with panic or sorrow, but with peace? What kind of mind is free enough to let go when the body gives way? To understand this, we have to look not at death itself, but at life, how we're living it right now. Because regret at the end isn't an accident. It's a pattern, and the pattern is usually this. We live as if we'll never die. We chase pleasure. We avoid discomfort. We grasp for things, people, identities, hoping they'll give us a sense of security. But everything we cling to is impermanent. Everything we build eventually breaks. And so, when death threatens to take it all away, we panic, not because death is painful, but because we're not ready to lose what we've been holding onto so tightly. In this way, death doesn't create regret, it reveals it. It exposes the gaps between how we lived and how we wish we had lived. But the good news is, we don't have to wait for that moment to see clearly. The Buddha taught us how to bring death into our awareness now, not to make us afraid, but to wake us up. Because death, when understood rightly, becomes our greatest teacher. It strips away illusions. It reminds us of what matters. And it invites us, urgently and compassionately, to begin living on purpose. That's where mindfulness begins. Not just the kind of mindfulness that watches the breath or calms the nerves, but the deeper mindfulness that asks, what am I doing with this life? Am I living in alignment with truth, with kindness, with clarity? Or am I moving through my days half asleep, numbed by distractions, chasing things that will mean nothing at the end? The Buddha's teachings were never meant to be abstract. They are direct and intimate. Because death is direct and intimate. In the Dhammapada, he says, the heedful do not die. The heedless are as if dead already. In other words, to live without awareness is to be spiritually dead. We may breathe, move, speak, but we are not truly alive if we are not awake to impermanence, to suffering, to the deep interdependence of all things. When people on their deathbeds are asked what they regret most, their answers are strikingly similar. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself. Not the life others expected of me. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd expressed my feelings more. I wish I'd stayed in touch with people who mattered. I wish I'd allowed myself to be happier. These are not just personal regrets. They are spiritual insights. They point to what we already know in our bones. That love matters more than status. That time is more precious than money. And that the present moment is all we ever truly have. Yet we forget. Again and again. That's why the Buddhist path isn't just about knowing the truth. It's about training the heart and mind to live that truth every day. That's why monks reflect daily on death. Not out of morbid fascination, but to keep their hearts soft, their priorities clear, and their attachments in check. One of the daily chants in many Theravada monasteries begins with this line: I am subject to aging. I have not gone beyond aging. I am subject to death. I have not gone beyond death. It's not depressing. It's liberating. Because when you remember that everything you love will pass, you begin to love more fully, more gently, more honestly. So how do we begin to live without regret? The first step is to stop running from death. Let it walk beside you. Let it guide your choices. Not with fear but with wisdom. Let it remind you that now is the only time to awaken. To speak kindly. To forgive. To serve. To listen deeply. If you were told that you had 1 year left to live, how would your life change? What would you stop doing? What would you finally begin? Now ask, why wait? The truth is, none of us know how long we have. Every breath is a gift, not a guarantee. And so the path of the Buddha invites us to live not in denial of death, but in the full embrace of this fleeting, precious life. This is not a message of despair. It's a call to clarity, a wake-up bell for the heart. Because when you live in alignment with truth, you don't fear death, you respect it. And that respect shapes every choice you make. You begin to value people more than possessions, moments more than achievements, presence more than perfection. And slowly, something shifts. You stop chasing happiness and start cultivating peace. You stop striving for immortality in your work, your body, your image, and instead, you pour yourself into this moment, fully. That's where meaning begins. That's where regret ends. Not in the grand gestures, but in the small, intentional acts of awareness and love. In this way, the Buddha's path is not about avoiding death. It's about dying every day to what is false, so that what is true can live. It's about letting go of grudges, of ego, of the idea that you are separate from others. And when you let go of all that isn't truly you, what remains is peace, a peace that no fear of death can shake. That's the peace we're walking toward in this teaching. And in the next part of this journey, we'll go deeper, not just into what regret looks like at the end, but how to begin entangling it now, before it's too late. Because no matter your age, your past, or your path so far, it is never too late to begin living with wisdom. It is never too late to begin living in a way that, when the end comes, you'll meet it with open hands and a quiet heart. There's something profoundly honest about the dying. When someone knows their time is near, all pretenses begin to fall away. The masks we wear in daily life, of strength, success, confidence, suddenly feel meaningless. What remains is often raw, but it is real, and that reality is a powerful teacher. Doctors, hospice workers, and spiritual caregivers who sit with the dying often hear the same confessions over and over. What they don't hear is regret about not buying a bigger house, not earning one more promotion, or not gaining more followers online. What they do hear are stories filled with emotion, longing, and sometimes, deep sorrow for a life not fully lived. And in that moment of truth, what rises to the surface most is the pain of having waited too long. There's something sacred in listening to these voices. We may think that the dying are different from us, that they exist in a realm separate from our busy lives, but they are simply versions of ourselves, further down the road. And what they're trying to say, in their final hours, is not meant to haunt us. It's meant to wake us up. One of the most common regrets shared is this: I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Think about that. We spend so much of our lives trying to meet expectations. From a young age, We're taught to achieve, to impress, to follow certain paths because they're considered respectable or secure. But rarely are we encouraged to ask, is this path mine? The Buddha saw this deeply. He left behind a palace and a future as a king, not because he was rejecting comfort, but because he sensed that the life he was living wasn't aligned with truth. And that same courage is within all of us. To step out of a life driven by fear or conformity, and step into a life that is lived with awareness, authenticity, and inner freedom. Another powerful regret that surfaces at the end of life is the failure to express love. I wish I had told the people I love how much they meant to me. I wish I hadn't held back my feelings. How often do we silence ourselves out of fear, of vulnerability, of rejection, of awkwardness? And how often do we assume that the people in our lives know we care, without ever saying it? But love unspoken is often love unfelt. The Buddha taught that loving kindness, or metta, is not just a feeling, it is a practice. A choice we make to radiate goodwill, to open the heart, to bridge the distance between ourselves and others. And this practice is not for their sake only, it is for ours. Because when love is withheld, it doesn't just hurt others. It shrinks our spirit. It feeds regret. Then there is the regret of disconnection. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I hadn't been so busy. In the rush of modern life, relationships are often sacrificed at the altar of ambition. But in the silence of a hospital bed, what becomes most precious is not our list of accomplishments, but the simple memory of a shared laugh, a held hand, a quiet conversation under the stars. The Buddha emphasized Sangha, the community of fellow seekers, as one of the 3 jewels of the spiritual path. Because we are not meant to walk this journey alone. And yet, many people die with loneliness in their hearts. Not because others weren't around, but because connection wasn't cultivated. Time wasn't made. Vulnerability wasn't allowed. We must remember, presence is the greatest gift we can offer one another. To sit with someone in their joy or their sorrow, without judgment or distraction, is to say, you matter. I see you. And in those moments, life becomes more real, more sacred, and far less forgettable. The dying also speak of forgiveness, both the need to give it and the deep yearning to receive it. I wish I hadn't held on to resentment. I wish I'd apologized sooner. These statements carried tremendous spiritual weight, because nothing binds the heart like unresolved pain. And at the end, what we carry is not only our memories, but the emotions attached to them. The Buddha was clear about the poison of anger. He said that holding onto anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. Yet we are the ones who get burned. Forgiveness is not always easy, but it is liberating. It releases both the giver and the receiver. And even if the other person is no longer in our lives, or no longer living, the act of forgiving within ourselves can free us from the chains of regret. Another common confession heard near death is simple, yet devastating. I wish I had allowed myself to be happy. Think about the layers in that. Happiness wasn't denied by circumstance, but by permission. People look back and realize they spent so much time waiting for life to be perfect before they let themselves feel joy. Waiting for the job, the relationship, the ideal conditions. But joy, the Buddha taught, is available now, not in the grasping for more, but in the letting go, in the stillness between 2 breaths, in the softness of compassion, in the beauty of a single moment fully lived. We are conditioned to seek happiness as if it's a destination far away. But what if happiness is simply the absence of craving, the end of resistance to what is? What if happiness is already here, but we are too distracted, too self-critical, too busy to notice? That's why the dying can teach us so much, not just about endings, but about beginnings. They remind us that the things we think matter so much, status, image, possessions, fade quickly. And what endures is the love we gave, the presence we offered, and the truth we lived. This reflection is not meant to scare us. It's meant to soften us, to humble us, to make us pay closer attention, not someday, but now, because it is in this moment, and only in this moment, that we can change our direction, that we can choose to live more consciously, to speak more truthfully, to forgive more easily, to love more boldly. Imagine for a moment that your death is not a far-off event, but a companion walking silently beside you, reminding you of what really matters. Imagine if, instead of running from that awareness, you welcomed it, not to darken your days, but to brighten them, to bring you back to the beauty of being here. Now, when we sit with the reality of death, something miraculous happens. The noise fades, the ego quiets down, and what remains is a tender clarity, a knowing that life is not measured in years, but in presence, not in achievements, but in moments that truly touched our hearts. This is not just poetic. It is deeply practical, because once we learn from the regrets of the dying, we can begin living in a way that avoids those same regrets. We can ask the hard questions now. We can speak the truth now. We can live from love now. And that, perhaps, is the greatest gift the dying offer us, not fear, but wisdom, not sorrow, but urgency, not hopelessness, but the realization that every breath is an opportunity to return to what truly matters. In the next part of our journey, we will explore what actually makes a life meaningful, not in theory, but through the lens of Buddhist wisdom and real-world insight. Because dying without regret is not about escaping death. It's about embracing life, fully and courageously, before it's too late. When we listen to the voices of the dying, as we did in the last part, we begin to hear not just regret, but clarity. In the stillness between life and death, people often gain a sudden, piercing understanding of what truly matters. And in that clarity lies an invitation to stop waiting and start living with meaning now. But what is a meaningful life? Really? That word, meaning, is used so often, and yet so rarely questioned. We say we want a meaningful job, a meaningful relationship, a meaningful existence, but if we pause and look closely, we might realize that we've been chasing shadows, trying to build meaning out of things that are fragile, impermanent, and ultimately unable to satisfy a deeper hunger within us. The Buddha understood that longing well. He didn't teach meaning as something you find outside yourself. He taught it as something you uncover by turning inward. A life becomes meaningful, not when we accumulate enough experiences, or when we are admired by others, but when we live in alignment with the truth of what we are. When we stop pretending, and start seeing clearly. Meaning begins with awareness, with waking up from the autopilot mode of life. Most people drift, days blur together, time disappears, and it's not because life isn't beautiful, it's because we're not present for it. We're so caught up in doing that we forget how to simply be. We don't notice the breath. We don't feel the sunlight on our skin. We don't truly listen when someone speaks. And in that absence of presence, life slips by. To live meaningfully is to reclaim that presence. To inhabit your body, your heart, your choices. To say, this moment matters. Not because it's dramatic or exciting, but because it is real. It is now. It is the only place where life actually happens. From the Buddha's perspective, meaning also comes from understanding suffering, not running from it. In the West, we're often told that the goal is to be happy. But in Buddhism, the goal is to understand, to see things as they really are. Because it is in seeing clearly that compassion arises. And with compassion, meaning naturally follows. When you look into your own suffering, not to drown in it, but to learn from it, you discover that even pain has wisdom to offer. The loss you experienced, the heartbreak, the grief, none of it was meaningless. If anything, it opened your heart, it softened your judgment, It humbled your ego. That is where the roots of a meaningful life grow, not in what went right, but in what broke you open. One of the deepest teachings of the Buddha is that all things are impermanent. The beauty of a sunset, the joy of a child's laughter, the body you inhabit, the people you love, everything changes, everything ends. And while that may sound sad, it's actually what gives life its urgency and its depth. Imagine if nothing ever changed. Imagine if you lived forever. Would anything really matter? Meaning emerges precisely because time is limited. Because every moment, every choice, is unrepeatable. And that's why the small things matter more than we think. A kind word, a pause to truly listen, a decision to let go of resentment. These don't show up on resumes or biographies, but they are what shape the quality of our days and the legacy we leave behind. The Buddha also taught that meaning is found in service, not in serving our ego, but in serving life itself. When we shift our focus from what we can get to what we can give, something inside us changes. We feel more alive, more connected, more grounded in something larger than ourselves. This doesn't mean you have to become a monk or give away all your possessions. It means asking, in every situation, how can I show up with integrity? How can I bring compassion here? What would love do right now? Even mundane acts can become sacred when done with presence and intention. Washing the dishes, holding a door, saying thank you and meaning it. The world doesn't need more grand gestures, it needs more wholehearted ones. Another pillar of a meaningful life, according to the Buddha, is right intention. In the Noble Eightfold Path, he emphasizes that the way we think, the seeds we plant in the mind, will determine the direction of our life. Are our intentions rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion? Or are they grounded in generosity, kindness, and clarity? This is not about moral perfection. It's about alignment. When your outer actions reflect your inner values, life begins to feel coherent. You stop feeling torn between who you are and who you pretend to be. You begin to trust yourself. And that trust, that sense of inner wholeness, is one of the deepest forms of meaning a person can experience. In modern life, we often confuse meaning with busyness. If we're constantly doing, constantly producing, we assume our lives are important. But the Buddha turned that idea upside down. He taught the value of stillness, of silence, of stopping long enough to actually meet yourself. When was the last time you sat quietly with no agenda, no phone, no task, no performance, and simply listened to your own heart? Not to fix it, not to judge it, but to understand it. That space, though uncomfortable at first, is where clarity is born. It's where you begin to see what matters and what doesn't. And once you begin to see, you can no longer go back. You can no longer waste your time in meaningless drama, in hollow pursuits, in shallow connections. Your life becomes precious, not because it's perfect, but because it's awake. There's one more thing the Buddha pointed to as essential for a meaningful life: letting go. Not just of things, but of identities, roles, and fixed ideas about who you are. So much of our suffering comes from clinging to the past, to opinions, to how we think things should be. But freedom, and with it meaning, comes when we release that grip. This doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming available to the flow of life, available to respond instead of react, available to change, to grow, to evolve beyond the small self we thought we were. The most meaningful lives are not the loudest. They are often quiet, rooted in inner peace. The person who smiles with gentleness, the one who forgives without fanfare, the one who shows up when it matters most. These people may not be famous, but they radiate something deeper than fame. They live in a way that makes others feel safe, seen, and inspired to live more truthfully themselves. That, too, is meaning. To live in a way that your presence becomes a blessing. Not because you tried to impress, but because you dared to be real. If you died today, could you say your life was meaningful? That question is not meant to cause fear. It's meant to offer freedom. Because if the answer is no, or not yet, that means you still have time. Time to realign, time to forgive, time to begin again, more wisely, more tenderly, more awake. The Buddha didn't ask us to become saints. He asked us to become honest. With ourselves, with each other, with this fragile, fleeting life. And in that honesty, meaning reveals itself, not as something to chase, but as something that's been quietly waiting inside us all along. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore how the Buddha's teachings offer a practical, compassionate path to living and dying without regret. A way of life that doesn't just think about meaning, but embodies it in every breath. So what does it actually mean to live without regret? Not as an abstract ideal, but as a living, breathing way of being? The Buddha's teachings offer us more than comforting ideas. They offer us a practical map, a path that can be walked with each step, each breath, each choice we make. This path is not reserved for monks in robes or spiritual masters. It was always meant for ordinary people, living ordinary lives, people with families, work, fears, and hopes. Because the potential for awakening exists in every single human heart. And it begins not with changing your entire life overnight, but with turning inward, listening deeply, and aligning your life with something greater than yourself. One of the Buddha's most essential teachings is the Eightfold Path. It is not a list of rules or commandments. It is a guide, a framework that helps us walk through life with clarity, compassion, and purpose. And most importantly, it is a path that leads to freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom from suffering born of delusion, clinging, and resistance. The first element of the path is right view. This is not about adopting a particular belief. It is about seeing life as it truly is. To see that everything is impermanent, that all conditioned things arise and pass away, that attachment brings suffering, and that liberation is possible through inner transformation. Right view helps us stop blaming the world for our suffering and start looking at the habits of mind that create it. From that seeing comes right intention. The Buddha taught that our thoughts shape our reality. What we think, we become. So we ask ourselves, are my intentions rooted in kindness or in selfishness? Am I acting from fear or from love? To live without regret, our actions must come from a heart that wants to reduce harm, not cause it, to bring healing, not division. Then comes right speech. Words matter. They can build or destroy. And at the end of life, many people look back and realize it wasn't just what they did, but what they said, or didn't say, that left the deepest mark. Right speech means speaking truthfully, but also gently. It means knowing when to be silent. It means offering words that heal rather than wound. How many regrets could we prevent if we spoke with more awareness? Right action follows. This is how we move through the world. It includes the precepts, refraining from killing, stealing, harming others, or abusing sexuality. But it goes deeper than that. It asks, are my actions aligned with compassion? Do they reflect the kind of person I want to be? Living ethically is not about guilt. It's about integrity. It's about being able to look at your life without needing to hide from it. Then we arrive at right livelihood. This is not just about what job you have. It's about asking, does my work cause harm or reduce it? Does it contribute to suffering or to healing? Many people feel conflicted here. They stay in jobs that drain them, that go against their values, because they feel trapped. But the Buddha reminded us, what you do with your time is not neutral. It shapes your mind, your relationships, your legacy. Right effort is the energy we bring to our path. It doesn't mean pushing or striving blindly. It means cultivating wholesome qualities, love, patience, forgiveness, and letting go of unwholesome ones like greed, envy, and hatred. It's the effort to return, again and again, to what matters most. No one walks the path perfectly, but each time you return, you grow stronger. Then comes right mindfulness. This is the practice of presence, of noticing what is happening in your body, your mind, your heart, without judgment. Mindfulness is not just for meditation. It's for washing dishes, driving your car, speaking to your child. When you are mindful, life becomes vivid. Regret fades because you are truly here, and not lost in the past or future. And finally, right concentration. This is the cultivation of deep focus, of mental clarity. It arises from meditation but spills over into everything. When your mind is calm, you can see clearly, you make wiser decisions, you react less, you respond more, and over time, the storms inside you begin to settle. All of these elements together form a way of life, a way that leads not only to peace in the present, but to a death that comes without panic. Because when you live with clarity, intention, and compassion, you don't have to scramble at the end to fix what was broken. You've been living in repair all along. But let's be honest, walking this path is not always easy. We fall short, we get distracted, we forget. That's why the Buddha didn't just give teachings, he gave practices. And one of the most powerful practices for living without regret is reflection on impermanence. When you take even a few minutes each day to reflect that you, and everyone you love, will someday die, something changes in you. Your priorities sharpen, your grievances soften, your appreciation deepens. It's not meant to make you fearful. It's meant to make you awake. Many Buddhist monks begin their day with these reflections. I am of the nature to age. I am of the nature to become ill. I am of the nature to die. All that is mine, dear and delightful, will change and vanish. When you carry this awareness, not as a burden but as a compass, your life begins to align naturally. You don't waste time on petty arguments. You don't delay saying, I love you. You don't keep postponing your dreams. Because you realize, the future is not a promise. It is a possibility. And it is only through the present moment that we can shape it. Another practice that helps dissolve regret is metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. This simple practice, repeated silently, opens the heart. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. Then, extending it outward. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. When you practice this daily, your heart changes shape. You become less reactive, more forgiving, and your life begins to carry a gentleness that stays with others long after you're gone. The Buddha also encouraged generosity, not just of money, but of time, attention, forgiveness, presence. Generosity is the antidote to the fear of not having enough. It is the antidote to regret. Because when we give freely, we live freely. If you want to die without regret, ask yourself often, am I giving what I can, when I can, with the heart that I have? You don't need a lot. A kind glance, a listening ear, a warm touch. These are gifts that ripple out in ways you'll never fully see. Ultimately, the Buddha's path is not about escaping death. It is about being so fully alive that when death comes, it feels like a gentle ending, not a tragic interruption. It's about living each day with the kind of honesty, courage, and compassion that leaves nothing important unsaid or undone. So let this be your invitation, not someday, but now, to walk the path not with pressure, but with devotion, to let each step, each breath, each choice become a small act of awakening. Not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you're remembering what you truly are. A being capable of wisdom, of love, of liberation. In the next part of our journey, we will explore the quiet power of mindfulness, compassion, and letting go. Practices that help us meet each moment with presence, and each ending with peace. In the quiet corners of life, far from the noise and ambition of the world, something begins to stir. a longing not for more, but for deeper, deeper peace, deeper clarity, deeper love, and it is in these quiet places, within ourselves, that the Buddha's most transformative teachings take root. One of the most profound of those teachings is mindfulness, not as a trendy practice or a temporary escape, but as a way of living, a way of being with what is, with full attention, with full presence, with full heart. Mindfulness is often misunderstood as just being calm or relaxed. But in the Buddha's path, mindfulness is far more powerful than that. It is the light that illuminates the mind. It is the lens through which we see clearly, without distortion. And when we begin to see clearly, regret loses its grip, because mindfulness brings us back, again and again, to this moment, where real life is happening. When you are truly mindful, you do not miss your life. You do not rush past the small joys. You do not numb yourself through distraction. You are here for the laughter, the tears, the silence, the uncertainty. You are no longer a visitor in your own life. You are home. But mindfulness is not always comfortable. It asks you to see not only the beautiful, but also the painful, to sit with your anger without acting on it, to watch your fear without collapsing into it, to notice your grasping without judging it. This kind of awareness is fierce in its honesty, but gentle in its touch. And over time, it changes everything. Because when you begin to see your patterns, you begin to loosen them. When you begin to feel your emotions fully, they no longer control you. When you stay present in discomfort, you stop creating more suffering. And with each moment of mindful attention, something deep inside begins to soften, something that was holding tight out of habit or fear. This is where compassion begins to bloom, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. The Buddha never taught mindfulness as a dry technique. It was always infused with compassion. Awareness without kindness becomes harsh, but awareness with compassion becomes healing. You begin to hold your suffering like you would hold a crying child, not trying to fix or reject it, but simply being with it in love. And when you can offer that kind of tenderness to yourself, you can begin offering it to others. You begin to realize that every person you meet is carrying something, a hidden grief, a silent longing, a burden they may not have words for. And so you start to listen more deeply, speak more gently, forgive more easily, love more freely. Compassion doesn't mean becoming weak or letting others walk over you. It means seeing the shared humanity in all beings. It means no longer needing to prove yourself through conflict or comparison. It means allowing others the space to be flawed, just as you allow yourself that same grace. And from that place of compassion, the heart begins to open in another direction, toward letting go. Letting go is perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of the spiritual path. People often think it means not caring, or giving up, but the Buddha meant something deeper. Letting go does not mean detachment from life. It means non-attachment to what cannot stay. It means recognizing that all things, no matter how beautiful or beloved, will one day pass, that the tighter we cling, the more we suffer. That freedom comes not from having more, but from needing less, and not because you've numbed your desires, but because you've seen through their illusions. We cling because we think we are separate. We grasp because we think something outside us will complete us. But letting go is the realization that you are already whole, that nothing and no one can add or subtract from the truth of your being. And yet, letting go is not a one-time act. It is a daily practice. Letting go of a resentment you've rehearsed for years. Letting go of the belief that you're not enough. Letting go of the future you thought you needed. Letting go of control, of certainty, of the need to be right. This kind of release is not always dramatic. Often, it is subtle, a softening, a breath, a moment of stillness where the heart whispers, "This, too, I can put down." And in that moment, something miraculous happens. Peace enters, spaciousness returns, Life becomes lighter. Many people try to control life to avoid suffering. But the Buddha taught that suffering doesn't come from impermanence. It comes from our refusal to accept it. When we let go, we are not losing, we are returning to what is real, to what is alive, to what is free. In this way, mindfulness, compassion, and letting go are not separate. They are three aspects of the same awakening. Mindfulness sees, compassion holds, letting go frees. Together, they form a path that leads not just to peace, but to a life that is lived so fully, so wisely, that when death comes, it feels like the natural continuation of a life well lived. And this, truly, is what it means to die without regret. Not that you lived perfectly, but that you lived honestly. That you didn't turn away from the difficult. That you didn't miss the beauty. That you didn't withhold love. That you learned how to meet each moment with the fullness of your being. If today were your last day, could you say that you met it with presence? That you loved with your whole heart? That you offered something of yourself to this world, not for applause, but out of kindness? These are not dramatic questions. They are intimate ones, and the answers do not come from the intellect, but from the heart. You know the truth of your life by how it feels when you are still, by how much light is in your breath, by how softly you can sit with yourself. The Buddha never promised a life without pain, but he did promise the end of unnecessary suffering. And that promise begins to be fulfilled when we walk the path of mindfulness, compassion, and release. Not in theory, but in action. In the way you greet your loved ones. In the way you speak to yourself. In the way you forgive the past. In the way you say yes to life, even when it's messy, uncertain, or painful. And perhaps most importantly, in the way you prepare, not for some distant future, but for the only moment that's ever truly yours, this one. Because in this moment, you can choose to awaken. You can choose to be kind. You can choose to let go. And that choice, repeated again and again, becomes your path. In the next part of our journey, we will explore how to make death not a feared event at the end of life, but a daily teacher. A mirror that keeps us honest, humble, and deeply alive. There is a quiet truth that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. We are dying every day. Not in a dramatic or morbid way, but gently, silently, moment by moment. Every breath we take brings us closer to the final one, and far from being a reason to fear. This truth is actually the doorway to freedom, if we're willing to open it. The Buddha didn't wait until his deathbed to think about impermanence. It was the very realization of death that led him to renounce his comfortable life in the palace and begin his search for truth. He saw the aging face of a man, the sickness in a broken body, the stillness of a corpse, and he understood, no matter how privileged, intelligent, or strong you are, you cannot escape death. But instead of despairing, he woke up. He turned that truth into a compass. And that compass guided every step of his journey toward awakening. You can do the same. To live each day as preparation for death is not dark, it is luminous. Because when you remember you are going to die, you begin to truly live. You stop wasting time. You stop holding back love. You stop clinging to things that don't matter. And you start showing up for your own life. The Buddha encouraged us to reflect on death regularly. Not to be depressed, but to be diligent. In the Pali Canon, he even gave specific meditations known as Maranasati, recollections on death. Monks and laypeople alike were taught to contemplate. Death could come at any moment. Am I ready? Imagine asking yourself that question, not just once a year, or when someone you love dies, but every day. What would change? What would fall away? What would become suddenly urgent? And what would finally be let go? The people who live most fully are often those who've come closest to death. You hear this from survivors of accidents, from those who've faced cancer or war. Suddenly, the world becomes sharper. They stop worrying about petty things. They listen more. They love deeper. They say what they mean. Why? Because death clarified everything. But you don't need a crisis to learn this. You just need mindfulness and the courage to look. One way to begin is through a simple daily reflection. If today were my last day, how would I want to show up? Ask it in the morning. With sincerity. Let it guide your decisions. Let it reshape your priorities. It might feel strange at first, but over time, this reflection begins to strip away the unnecessary. It helps you say no to distractions and yes to presence. No to bitterness and yes to peace. Another way to prepare for death daily is by completing your day with forgiveness. At night, before you sleep, reflect. Who did I hurt today? Knowingly or unknowingly? Where did I act from ego or fear? And then ask, can I forgive myself? Can I begin again? And equally important, who hurt me today? Am I still carrying resentment? If the answer is yes, see if you can soften. Not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve to be free. Carrying anger is a heavy burden. And the truth is, we never know if tonight will be our last sleep. What a gift it is to die with an unburdened heart. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering, and that includes clinging to life itself. Most people are terrified of death not because of death itself, but because they haven't fully lived. Because there's still something they're chasing, something they're avoiding, something they haven't made peace with. But if you live each day with mindfulness, compassion, and truthfulness, then death is not an interruption, it is a completion. It is simply the closing of a chapter well written. Think of your life like a sand mandala. In Tibetan Buddhism, monks spend days, sometimes weeks, painstakingly creating intricate patterns of colored sand. When it's done, they don't frame it or try to preserve it. They sweep it away, not with sadness, but with reverence, because they understand. Beauty doesn't need to last to be meaningful. It just needs to be fully created, fully seen, fully loved while it's here. Can you treat your life the same way? Not as something to control or perfect, but as something to pour your heart into. Moment by moment, and then release with grace? There's a line from the Dhammapada that says, "Better than 100 years lived without wisdom is one day lived in wisdom." That is the essence of preparing for death, not how long you live, but how deeply you meet each moment. And part of that depth is honesty. What are you avoiding in your life? What truth are you not facing? What conversation are you postponing? What dream are you burying under fear? To prepare for death is to begin living with nothing left unsaid, nothing left unloved, nothing left undone. It is to stop waiting for the perfect moment. Because the perfect moment is this one. Death teaches urgency, not panic, but presence. It teaches you to hug your child a little longer, to look your friend in the eyes and say, "Thank you for being in my life." To sit with your morning tea not as a task, but as a sacred ritual. To slow down enough to feel the wind, to hear the birds, to be here. And it also teaches humility. No matter how much you achieve, how much you earn, how much you know, death equalizes everything. The body will fall, the titles will fade, the memories of who you were will blur in time. What remains? The imprint of your presence, the ripple of your kindness, the residue of your awareness. So if you want to prepare for death, ask yourself, what am I leaving behind in every moment I live? Am I sowing peace or agitation? Am I building bridges or walls? Am I living in fear or in freedom? The answers may surprise you. And that's good, because surprise means awakening. It means you're beginning to look with new eyes. And with those eyes, everything becomes sacred, even the smallest moment, even the breath you're taking right now. There is a story in the Buddhist tradition about a man who asked the Buddha, "How should we live, knowing we will die?" And the Buddha replied, "By living as though the house were already on fire. Not in panic, but in clarity, in devotion, in immediacy. Because the truth is, the house is already burning. Life is fleeting. Every second is passing. And that's not a reason to despair, it's a reason to love more. To prepare for death is to live as if nothing is promised, and yet everything is a gift. It is to hold your loved ones with more gratitude, to release your grudges with more ease, to face your pain with more patience, to celebrate your joy without clinging, to walk this earth with reverence, knowing it is only yours for a short while. And when death finally comes, you will not be shocked. You will not panic. You will not plead for more time. You will meet it as a familiar companion, one you have walked beside every day, one who has whispered to you, "Live now. Don't wait. Be free." And if you've listened, you will smile, you will let go, and you will leave this life not with regret, but with peace. In the next part of our journey, we'll bring all of this together, exploring how to integrate the Buddha's teachings into daily life, so that each day becomes both a preparation for death and a celebration of life. As we arrive at this final reflection, take a moment to simply breathe. Let the silence settle. Let the teachings you've heard so far ripple through your heart. This entire journey has not been about death as an ending. It has been about life, about meeting life so fully, so truthfully, that when death arrives, there is nothing left to run from, nothing left undone, nothing left unsaid. The Buddha's path is not meant to be a philosophy you admire. It's meant to be a way of being that you embody. The true fruit of the Dharma is not found in words or even ideas, but in the lived experience of waking up, moment by moment, day by day. And so in this final part, we gather everything we've learned and bring it into life. Not someday, but today. Imagine living in such a way that your ordinary day becomes a sacred ritual. That even the simplest acts, brushing your teeth, greeting a neighbor, preparing food, are done with mindfulness, compassion, and presence. This is not a fantasy. This is what the Buddha taught. That liberation is not somewhere far away. It's right here, in how you meet this very moment. So how do we bring these teachings home? Into our bodies, our breath, our relationships, our daily rhythm? First, by remembering that you already have everything you need. The path is not about becoming someone new. It's about peeling away what is not true. Fear, pride, illusion, and beneath all that, you find what was there all along, your capacity to live wisely and love freely. Practice begins with intention. Each morning, take a few quiet minutes before the rush of the world grabs you. Sit, breathe, ask yourself, what kind of human being do I want to be today? Not what do I want to achieve, or impress, or prove, but who do I want to be? With this breath, with this body, with this precious, impermanent day. When you do this consistently, you begin to notice that your days are no longer random. They become aligned, centered, whole, because you are no longer sleepwalking through life. You are walking with awareness. You are returning again and again to the only place where life happens, now. Next, carry mindfulness into action, not as a strain, but as a returning. When you notice your mind wandering, gently guide it back. When you find yourself judging, breathe and soften. When anger arises, pause and feel it, without feeding it. When joy visits, receive it fully, without gripping. This is what it means to live consciously, not perfectly, but sincerely. To meet your humanity with curiosity, not condemnation. And when you forget, which you will, you simply return. That return, over and over, is what shapes your life. Let your relationships become your temple. Practice loving presence not just on a meditation cushion, but in every interaction. Listen more than you speak. Look others in the eye. Ask how they really are, and stay to hear the answer. Be generous not just with your money, but with your attention, your forgiveness, your care. The Buddha taught that Sangha, community, is one of the 3 jewels of the spiritual path. You cannot walk this road alone. You need others to reflect you, to challenge you, to remind you of who you really are when you forget. And they need you for the same reasons. Build that sangha wherever you are. A friend who walks with you. A group that meditates together. A family that eats with gratitude. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. And then, let death remain your teacher, not as a threat, but as a guide. Reflect often. If I knew this was my last week, what would I let go of? What would I cherish more? Who would I reach out to? Let those questions shape your life, not with anxiety, but with aliveness. The most awake people are not morbid. They are radiant. They laugh more, love deeper, and cling less, because they've stopped pretending that life is forever. And in doing so, they make each moment count. Forgiveness becomes easier when you remember death. You realize that holding on is heavy. That most of what divides us is rooted in fear, misunderstanding, and pain. And when you let go, not only do you set others free, you set yourself free. So forgive generously. And also, ask for forgiveness. Speak the hard truths with softness. Don't wait until your final breath to say, "I'm sorry. I forgive you," or "I love you." Say it now. Say it often. Let love be your legacy. And finally, be kind to yourself. The path is not about becoming a perfect being. It's about becoming an honest one. You will fall. You will forget. You will hurt others and be hurt. But if you keep returning, keep softening, keep learning, that is enough. That is awakening. There is no moment of arrival where everything is figured out. There is only this unfolding. Breath by breath. Some days you will feel spacious and kind. Some days you will feel lost and closed. Both are part of the journey. Just keep walking, keep returning, keep showing up with as much love as you can muster. And when the end comes, whether it's soon or many years from now, you will be ready. Not because you checked every box or avoided every mistake, but because you lived with eyes open and heart tender. Because you did your best to meet life on its terms. Because you practiced presence. Because you loved. This is the path the Buddha offered, not to escape life, but to embrace it so fully that death becomes just another step in the dance. And if you've danced with honesty and joy, there is nothing to regret. So take a deep breath now. Feel your feet on the earth. Feel your heart still beating. This moment is yours. This life is yours. Not forever, but for now. Let it be enough. Let it be sacred. Let it be lived, fully, freely, and without regret. If this teaching touched something in you, if it stirred a quiet truth, or helped you remember what really matters, take a moment now to sit with it. Let it settle in your heart. Let it move into your life. And if you feel that others in your life may need this message too, please consider sharing it. One simple act of generosity can ripple out in ways you'll never see. If you'd like to walk this path with us, to keep learning how to live and die with wisdom, presence, and peace, subscribe to this channel. We're building a space of calm, compassion, and clarity for those who seek the Dharma in a noisy world. And remember this: you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to begin again, with sincerity, right here, right now. May you live with intention. May you love with an open heart. And when the time comes, may you leave this life without regret. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. May you be well. May you be free.